This is going to be a really interesting evening tonight, I have to tell you. First of all, Leanne, thank you very much for the introduction. Tonight we've got 3 alumni speakers who are playing leadership roles in leveraging business for social good. Doing business in sustainable and socially responsible ways is becoming increasingly important. Recent surveys show that 92% of Canadian small business owners feel a sense of responsibility to give back to the community, and 87% say that even doing so, if they don't see a financial gain, it's still worth it for them. Almost 70% say social responsibility creates repeat business customers. That's huge. This new business paradigm of purpose beyond profit is driving growth in community economic development, corporate sustainability, social innovation, conscious capitalism, B corporations, and more. And if you don't know what B corporations are, you'll learn tonight, as I found out as well too. Tonight's alumni speakers will shed light on these topics and share their stories of engaging in the business of doing good. Their profiles are included in the print program, so I'll cut my introductions a little bit short to let them tell you more about themselves and what they do. So first up is Wes Regan. Wes is a leader in the community economic development and is currently the executive director of the Hastings Crossing Business Improvement Association in Vancouver's downtown east side. Wes consults on social innovation, community engagement, and sustainable economic development, and volunteers with several organizations, including the Downtown Vancouver Association and the Vancouver Urban Farming Society. His passion for community engagement is indeed contagious. Shawn Smith. Shawn Smith is the founder and director of Radius, which stands for Radical Ideas Useful to Society, a social innovation lab and venture incubator housed at the SFU BD School of Business. His previous social innovation program called Global Agents has engaged thousands of young people and led to over $1 million of impact in 10 countries around the world, earning him international attention and recognition as a leader in social entrepreneurship. He's paying it forward in the most powerful of ways. And Denise Teschereau is the CEO and co-founder of Fairware, a custom-branded sustainable products company that makes products for some of North America's top sustainable brands. Denise is committed to influencing social and environmental sustainability at the beginning and not the end of the supply chain. And this is how Fairware is helping to change the world through the simple act of buying. You'll also be able to see Denise in a documentary on conscious capitalism called Not Business as Usual. Now, I know, like you'll have questions for our panelists, so I'm going to ask you to save them till the end. We've allowed time for that. So please join me in welcoming our 3 panelists for today's event. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to be here tonight, and as I came in earlier and had a quick bite to eat. It struck me just the different generations that are represented here in the room today, and the past 50 years of this institution. The fact that we're celebrating this here today, it really dawned on me earlier when President Petter was speaking, just seeing some of those your faces here in the crowd. So it's really a pleasure to be here today. I graduated in 2012 with a BA in geography, and I'm sure speaking about the impact of businesses doing good in our community, I'm sure all the BBA and MBA grads here are curious to see my take on that. But SFU really taught me about engagement from the get-go. My experience at SFU was something I really wanted to make the most of going in as a mature student. And I'm really happy to say that I found a number of different entry points to find ways to engage with the community, whether that was through the Simon Fraser Public Interest Research Group or whether that was through volunteering at different trade shows. The most powerful of all of them, though, was co-op, which I'm sure many of you here as well took advantage of. And I do think, I agree with President Petter when he said earlier that SFU co-op is probably the strongest, if not one of the strongest in Canada. And it was there that I began working at a community economic development agency called Building Opportunities with Business, which I'm going to speak about a little bit further. So while at Building Opportunities with Business, which was a public-private partnership in the downtown east side formed in the early 2000s, I was introduced to social enterprise, social innovation, social purpose business, all these different concepts that we hear, and given an opportunity to work in the business development and communication side of the organization. And that is where I met a lot of the organizations that I'm still affiliated with today, such as Loco BC, such as BC Partners for Social Impact, and Hastings Crossing Business Improvement Association, where I'm currently the executive director. And the Hastings Crossing BIA grew out of my co-op experience at SFU. We went out into the community and we asked businesses about the downtown east side and asked them, how do you feel about being a business and what do you think we can achieve here if we're able to align what businesses are capable of with what the community needs in the context of low-income residents and the barriers that we face. And so the incorporating board of directors worked with me when I was at Building Opportunities with Business to develop a new concept for a business improvement area, which if you're not familiar with them, they are essentially a self-imposed taxation mechanism that's agreed to in a certain geography, and then the city sanctions that through the tax rolls, and we get to spend that money on programming that we feel is in the interest of our members. With Hastings Crossing, we aligned it with social impact, social innovation, and tried to connect everything we did to creating jobs for residents with barriers to employment in the downtown east side. But I also tried to connect back to the university, and any chance I got to find a job for an SFU student, for a co-op, for whoever else, I would try to find that opportunity too. And this is just a snapshot of our interactive business and services map here. It has full-on social media tools and everything embedded in it, all geocoded. I just went to SFU GIS and I said, are students looking for a project? We need this. We need someone to innovate something, to come up with this. And sure enough, a few months later, the students had provided something that was stellar, in my opinion, and we're still using it to this day. And those same students who are alumni now, we engaged to do some upgrading to this, which they're currently working on right now. So just an example of how, as alumni, I think we have an ongoing opportunity to re-engage with the university and find those types of opportunities and offer that hand up to the students that are there currently. But back to the business of doing good. We talked a little bit about engagement. And I think that the business of doing good can be summed up in some respects as it's just not business as usual. And I have a couple of examples of other SFU alumni who I think are doing fantastic stuff in the community here. Some of them are just down the street from us now as we speak. Ola Urban Flower Project, great little business. Megan Branson, SFU alumni from I think 2009, not sure. Started Ola Urban Flower Project when she realized that there was all sorts of local wild-sourced flowers and foliage that could be sold here in the store, creatively arranged, and she could create jobs for residents in the downtown east side. Check out our store. It's beautiful. It's on Cambie off of Cordova. Shift Urban Cargo Delivery. Graham Anderson, another arts major, oddly enough, who I had a class with that eventually became, not City Studio, but Change Lab. Realized that there was a gap to be filled in short-haul transportation. So he formed a cooperative company with several other students, and today they are doing short-haul trips from storage spaces to retail and other businesses in the city's core. And I think they're just two good examples of alumni that have really engaged the community in an innovative way and are leveraging business opportunities to create social or environmental impact. Here are two other examples of alumni from the SFU CED program, which is a continuing education program. Anna Ferrant on the top left. Most of you are probably, or many of you I'm sure, are familiar with Mark Brand. Mark Brand's right-hand woman who oversees the social impact aspects of Mark's businesses is really Anna Ferrant. She is there working day in, day out with low-income residents, placing them on the job and supporting them there. Jordan Berner on the bottom with Mission Possible, great organization that I'm happy to say the BIA works with closely, that hires residents in the downtown east side to remove graffiti, to clean up sidewalks, to clean awnings, and so on and so forth. Radius, a great new venture that's grown out at SFU, which I'm not going to take too much time talking about, but Shawn will be able to fill you in. Just so happens that Shift also, along with several other good ventures, has come through Radius. And so I think that as alumni, we've been exemplifying engagement and innovation for decades. And as much respect as I have for President Petter and his bold new vision, I think in some respects he was catching up to us, catching up to the university that has been, I think, at the forefront of this type of institutional culture for decades now. We've been doing this. And now we have a president who realizes that we can leverage this, that we can own this. And now that he's done that, it's become front and center and part of SFU's brand. And I think that's really special, but I do think that he's caught up to us. And so why, in the end, do we do all this, is the big question. And for me, I think it's because business as usual isn't good enough for us. Business as usual isn't going to create the sustainable and inclusive cities of the future that we want to live in. I believe that we're capable of more, and that this business of doing good is another way of saying that we are, I think, innovators, and that we are finding this way forward, that we are realizing that we are at a bit of a paradigm shift. And universities, I think, are playing a crucial role in trying to find that way forward. I find it very frustrating lately, the sort of the direction that the discourse around universities has taken, where we hear that it's all about filling perceived jobs and preparing young professionals to fill these boots. I think that is important, but universities are also engines of discovery. They're engines of innovation and problem solving. They're also places where we become citizens, where we learn about the responsibilities that we have in our communities. And I think it's reconciling these two things about the self-serving needs that we have and the desire to be creative, the desire to be problem solvers with this sense of responsibility that we have. And to me, that sort of sums up this aspect of doing business for good, or engaged in the business of doing good. Because I believe that most of us want to live in these ideal communities. We want to create those ideal places. And it takes institutions like universities, it takes elected officials, and it takes businesses, entrepreneurs, and problem solvers. But I think it takes a bit of a context of citizenship to roll those things into in order to understand the sense of obligation and responsibility that we have. Because we're responsible not just for our communities today, but also to the future. And when I looked in the room earlier and I saw the different generations represented here, I know that we have that impact. And those of you who have come before us, my parents' and grandparents' generation, you've had an impact on the world that we've inherited. And we today as alumni are creating these communities and having that impact for generations that are yet to come. And that's an incredible responsibility. It's also an incredible opportunity for us to do something impressive that they can look back at and go, wow, thank you. Thanks for making those decisions. Thanks for being innovative. Thanks for going to SFU. And so I leave you with a quick question before I wrap up. In this context of doing business for good and understanding these ideas of citizenship, of innovation, of entrepreneurialism, what is a university for? What does it mean to be an alumni or alumna of a university? And what does it mean specifically to be an alumni of SFU? I frankly kind of like this business of doing good thing. I think we could roll with that. Because for me, it's more than just about business. It's about all these other things. It's about citizenship. It's about reaching your potential. It's about building communities. And I think that SFU, as an institution, is exemplifying this. And I think it's a mirror image of what the alumni have been doing for years and years. Building communities, engaging one another, being innovative, being compassionate. And so I'm just very honored to be here tonight with all of you. I'm honored to take a snapshot of a couple of other innovative SFU alumni. I'm looking very forward to hearing our other speakers and to the panel discussion. And with that, I'm wrapping up.
First of all, I thought you were going to steal my thunder with your big Earth slide and your radius slide. I was going to have both of those in mind, but I cut at least the Earth one. So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for making the space for this conversation. I think it's one that can feel a little insular and echo chamber-like among ourselves sometimes, so it's really amazing to come out and have a conversation with all of you folks. I thought I'd frame this just a bit through my story from my launchpad as an SFU BBA grad in 2005, through to starting my own organization to try and address some of the problems I saw in the world, Global Agents for Change, somehow parlaying that into an MBA at the University of Oxford focused in social entrepreneurship, and then coming back and continuing some of the past work, but also getting pulled into the universe again of SFU and teaching, designing courses, and eventually launching this Radius thing that I'll tell you a little bit more about. And I think when you put it up like that, this career trajectory makes tons of sense. But I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a lot of the folks I know who work in the sector, it only makes sense in hindsight. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. Most of the time my entry to this world felt more like this. It wasn't in my bio, but my first social venture was teaching a breakdancing class in Surrey for at-risk youth after school. So I can do that. But I felt like I left the university. I won't do it right now. I left the university with this amazing toolkit and feeling like I got a real handle on how to attack problems. And I got into the real world, and I was just turned upside down. I ended up wandering South America for 8 months, trying to figure out what I was going to do, because I was really passionate about all of this stuff. I'd become really engaged in a lot of social issues, and I felt like I was being launched out into a world that was way more excited about this stuff. And we've created an economy that does a really awesome job of churning out stuff like this, But it doesn't really do a very good job of working on the stuff that Wes and Denise and myself, and I'm sure most of you actually really care about in terms of building the communities that we'd like to see. And I can tell you that I'm sure there were jobs in this, but there weren't a lot of jobs in the business of doing good when I graduated. So I ended up starting my own organization. This was our first crack at a logo. Our organization was focused on, given my business background and a lot of our, it was fellow SFU alum, focused on sustainable solutions to global poverty, and by that we largely meant market-oriented and fiscally sustainable solutions to global poverty. I'd say at first our take at this was about as sophisticated as the logo, but over time we learned how to build, I think, a pretty nuanced machine for working on really, really interesting ideas. And the fundamental equation for us is we ran really awesome bike tours that were focused on social change, and they were meant to be a transformative experience for the youth that participated. This is us after riding from Vancouver to Tijuana. And talking about social change and talking about global issues all the way down and raising a ton of money. We did other tours from Amsterdam to Istanbul and Ecuador and Cambodia, and we built an organization that managed to pay for itself doing this, but also managed to spin off quite a lot of other money. Participants fundraised to participate in these tours. And we ended up investing that into organizations like Livelihoods. So we were working on these sustainable solutions to global poverty almost entirely in East Africa. And our mission was to work with very early stage organizations that had pretty cool ideas but weren't able to find the financial or other support to kind of get them to that first stage or second stage of development, say. So the mission of Livelihoods, they were working on youth unemployment, particularly in Kenya, which is where they're based, where there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young people who cannot find jobs, are underemployed or unemployed entirely. And it's a powder keg for the country to try and figure out how to deal with this. Their approach was really interesting, though. They didn't come up and say, how do we help? What do all these poor, needy kids need from us? What can we do? They said, how can they contribute? How can we think about how these youth can feel powerfully engaged in their society as agents of change themselves? And what they ended up landing on is nobody knows urban slum communities like the youth that live there and can't get jobs. Also, nobody knows how to distribute socially beneficial products into these communities. So they ended up training up and employing this workforce that ended up being sales agents in all of these communities and selling things like solar lanterns, selling things like energy-efficient stoves, making sure these great products reached communities, creating jobs for the young people, and creating a self-sustaining financial machine for themselves. So that was one of the first organizations we worked with. We also did a few projects of our own. We created a crowdfunding platform for scholarships for young leaders in the developing world. Ours was called Education Generation. We merged it with this organization, and I now sit on the board. A separate conversation, we can talk about nonprofit mergers, or as I like to call them, all ego mergers, because there's almost no money involved, but lots and lots of ego. If you don't think this business of social good has plenty of ego involved, there's its fair share. I think what all this came down to me in the end, though, it wasn't about me finding an amazing solution, or it wasn't about our team finding. I was really passionate about working with people with ideas for how the world could be different. Particularly young people who felt like they'd got tossed out into the world, flipped turned upside down like I did, and didn't have any idea how to go about this business of doing good, or any idea about how to align their values with the type of work they were going to be able to do in their life. And when I look back at it, and again, most of this only makes sense looking backwards, that's what brought me back to SFU to start this Radius business. I originally came back and designed a couple courses around social entrepreneurship, and it slowly just grew into this thing. We call it a Social Innovation Lab and Venture Incubator, and as you heard, it stands for Radical Ideas Useful to Society. We frame it partly around pushing SFU forward as a social innovation leader, but around these pillars of Radius EDU, which is thinking about heads, hands, and heart-focused approaches to education, about how we create these radical doers that are going to go out and do these amazing things. Radius Lab, where we partner really deeply with community partners like EcoTrust Canada right now on a variety of social and environmental sustainability issues, and try and understand how we approach these really complex issues and how do we churn out interesting solutions that could grow into something. And Radius Ventures, which is where we kind of catch all that stuff. That's our incubator accelerator, and that's where we take these ideas that are on the ground and try and grow them into something sustained. So I wanted to just give one example, and I can do it live because Alice is actually back there too. So Alice Park is an alumni of SFU. She came through a couple of my classes. She generated a really interesting idea around real-time car sharing or carpooling in a course called Sustainable Innovation. Took it forward and applied for a bridge program we've created that's application only, but you can get in with your idea and a team and earn credit for working on your social venture. She got some support from another great group at SFU called Venture Connection, and then eventually moved into our incubator accelerator and graduated like a week ago. So it's a really phenomenal idea. She's getting lots of traction. SFU is a paying client. So way to go. We're like collectively supporting our own. If you're a student or I think even alum, you can get access to the system and check it out. Van City's now landed as a client. She's got another big one that I'm not allowed to talk about that's coming down the pipeline. I'm making sure that I'm not allowed to talk about it. I'm going to show you a really quick video, though, about what Go Together is all about. Awesome, right? So Alice is quickly becoming our poster child, but she'll be up here soon enough. But she'll be here all night if you guys want to ask more questions about Go Together. A little more on Radius. We launched last year, and we're already working with a whole number of really amazing local and national partners. So these are some of the leading organizations in Canada or in BC working on really interesting issues. So we're working with Van City on how to build a more vibrant social venture ecosystem in BC. We're working with Ashoka Canada on new approaches to education for these type of change-making individuals. As I said, EcoTrust on their social and sustainability challenges, and City Studio we're partnering with to try and build a design challenge to help the city of Vancouver tackle some of its more interesting issues. So a bunch of cool stuff going on. It's only occurred to us recently that our tagline as a place for radical doers isn't actually a new idea, as Wes referenced as well. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the book. I know some of the folks in the audience are, but SFU is already known as the Radical Campus. And this book is about the founding of SFU and its radical roots. And SFU has always been an open and imaginative and progressive place that was purpose-built to keep an eye on the future and figure out what the future is that we want to build. So really, we're just casting back to the roots and trying to connect ourselves to that and thinking about new and interesting ways to try and take that forward as well. So last message, don't be this guy. You're all going to be successful. You've all got SFU degrees. You're going to be just fine in life. SFU is going to be fine. We can keep doing what we're doing. But to be honest, all those problems I listed at the very beginning aren't going to solve themselves. They're not going to be solved by the three of us sitting on stage. It's going to be a collective effort. It's a really fun community of people who are excited about trying to take this stuff on head on, and you're invited. So I'll leave you with that.
I was hoping that slide would change. I was a little nervous that that guy would be up there the whole time. I get to have coffee with Alice on Monday, and I'm even more excited now after seeing that video. So my name is Denise Teschereau, and I know Ian introduced me earlier. I'm the CEO of Fairware, and Fairware is a Vancouver-based company that has clients all over North America, and we do custom-branded promotional product, that stuff people lovingly refer to as swag, trash, and trinkets. Tchotchkes, and we really launched Fairware 9 years ago now to revolutionize that industry and to kind of turn it on its head and rethink it. So I'm going to just tell you some stories, a little bit of my journey to get there, how I think business can play a role in changing the world, and how you can get engaged, whether you're an entrepreneur or a sustainability director, or no matter what you're doing, ways to kind of leverage your own skill set to get into the game, so to speak. So I have always self-defined as an environmentalist. I've always self-defined as an activist and a change maker. I went to Trent University, which is even more radical than SFU. I did a degree in international development and environmental studies. I spent a year in Asia. I spent a year in South America as part of my studies. And when I got out of my undergrad, I moved back to Vancouver because I knew I wanted to work here. And everyone always said, go to grad school in the city where you want to stay. And I was from Vancouver. So I came home and I called UBC and I called SFU. And I called the UBC Planning School and I called SFU Resource and Environmental Management. And, I think back on that and how the experience of being kind of onboarded or engaged in the School of Resource Management, the questions they asked, how welcome they made me feel when I was even just checking them out, really swayed my judgment compared to the phone call I made to UBC. And it was just really interesting as kind of an opening segue to my time at SFU that it started with the first phone call and how friendly they were when they answered the phone. And it's kind of a good lesson when you're in business and in sales. It can leave such a potent first impression. And I had a great first impression at SFU. I got a degree predictably in resource and environmental management. I felt like it was aligned with everything I was passionate about. And if you would have asked me then, you're going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. You're going to have a bunch of staff. You're going to be doing business all over North America. I would have literally bent over laughing. Like, it was so far from my mind. I still struggle to balance my checkbook. Like, I'm the most unlikely entrepreneur that you can find. But I had a great experience at SFU. I did 2 or 3 or 4 co-ops. I did them all the time. I had a great time out in the community. And I got a, again, predictable job as I got out of grad school, which was working with the Recycling Council of BC. And I was working in waste and recycling, predominantly with municipalities and regional governments on the stuff that they were dealing with at the end of the day. And it was packaging, and it was products, and it was all ending up in the landfill. And what really struck me is they had absolutely zero say on the materials, on the design, on the stuff that they were dealing with. And it just seemed like the wrong place to be doing that work. So I shuffled a little further up the pipeline, and I got a job with Mountain Equipment Co-op. And I was their first director of sustainability, and I oversaw their foundation and all of their work nationally on their sustainability agenda, which included ethical sourcing and dealing with sweatshop issues. It included greening their facilities and their retail stores across Canada and engaging in the community and granting dollars. So I did that for 7 years, and it wasn't like the light bulb went off, but it was the light bulb got brighter. That business was powerful. I'll always remember calling big brands or important people when I worked for this little nonprofit, and literally no one would call me back. And then, you work for a $250 million retailer, and it's amazing. People call you back right away. So it's, it didn't take long for me to realize that there was sort of a power and a potency in being in the business community. And I was, I think, slowly coming into my own as an entrepreneur, and it started by being an intrapreneur within MEC and really challenging the structures there, even though it's a co-op and it's a beloved sustainable brand in Canada. It's still tough to turn the dial on old habits that happen in supply chains. And, gosh, we really need that product here for the start of the next season. Let's fly it in instead of put it on a boat. And the resulting impacts are huge on a carbon perspective, but tough habits to change when you're used to doing that. So I was starting to get a taste of being entrepreneurial from the inside, and I was doing a lot of events and campaigns for MEC through the community side. And I realized I couldn't get stuff to put the MEC brand on that met our values. And I was like, well, that's interesting. What do you mean I can't get an organic lip balm, an organic T-shirt, or a bag where I trust the supply chain where they're not using children? Like, how can you not, in this whole world of swag, like how can there not be good swag? And I was like, interesting. And right around that time, a few things happened. One was I saw a buddy of mine on the bike path, and he had a great international nonprofit, who I won't name, with a T-shirt on that said "Make Trade Fair." And he was telling me how they were getting grief in the Globe and Mail in that moment because the T-shirt was made by a brand that was notorious for union busting and labor violations. I thought, wow, that's a bit of a disconnect. And it was that incident, that kind of moment of truth. And I got a door prize from a beloved financial institution in town, very well known for their social responsibility, and it was made in Burma or Myanmar. And I thought, this is what I do all day long for Mountain Equipment Co-op. How is nobody in this space doing it? And that was really how Fairwear started, was just realizing a market opportunity, feeling like personally I wanted to change, and also seeing an industry. When I looked at outdoor retail and what Patagonia and Nike and Timberland and brands like that were doing, they were way out ahead. When I looked at the promotional product industry, it was literally like staring a dinosaur in the face. And I think I just have that personality of, let me at it. And I wanted to take it on. I felt like it was an industry ripe for revolution. So, this journey from an environmental undergrad to a master's in applied science and environmental management, all of a sudden I'm in the swag industry. And I go to my first trade show in Las Vegas, of course, and I walk in, and I'm used to going to these outdoor shows where, you go surfing in the morning before you go to the show, and everybody's so healthy. And I get in, and the first product I see is custom branded fuzzy dice. And I walk in, and the trade show floor, you can walk 8 miles and not be through it in the course of 4 days, and it's like off-gassing volatile organic compounds. And I had this moment of, what have I done? But that was 9 years ago. Fast forward to today, I'm still in the industry, and I've been able to really move the dial. And what's been interesting about it is this incredibly competitive industry. It's a price-sensitive industry, and it's a commodity-based industry. So, it's been interesting to see how our passion as a brand, we started the company on day one with a mission to change the world through the simple act of buying. And, you might buy a t-shirt this month. I'm going to probably buy about 4,000 tomorrow. So my ability to drive change in that supply chain and ask them questions about what's the lead content in the dyes that you're using in that t-shirt, or is your facility certified from a human rights perspective by any of the agencies out there that's certified, is quite high, and we've been able to ramp up. And I think what's been interesting for me is being able to differentiate on our passion makes it so much easier to get up in the morning as an entrepreneur. It makes my staff that much more passionate. It makes them that much more loyal. It enables me to get great talent, and it enables me to keep good talent. And when I look at how we're measured against the industry, we get a lot of kudos from the good business world, and we see each other at events all the time, and people in the sustainable business community know a lot about Fairware. What's been really interesting in the last couple of years is how we've performed when you look at conventional business metrics. So in the last 2 years, we've been named in the top 10 fastest growing promotional product distributors in North America. 2 years ago, we were on the W100, the top 100 most profitable companies in Canada. Last year, we were on the Profit 500, top 500 fastest growing, most profitable companies in Canada. So by these very traditional metrics, we've been succeeding. And when I look at our industry, I just did an interview this morning with an industry trade magazine. And they're like, I think they still think it's quaint. They're like, oh, you guys are adorable up there in Canada. And then they start to hear our client list. And I said, I've got to go because I've got like 3 client calls, one after the other. And the first one's with Ben & Jerry's. And the second one is with the UN. And the third one is with UNICEF. And it just, the pause on the end of the phone was like, it's not really that quaint. And tomorrow I'm talking to Patagonia Nevada. So if you want to talk quaint, we can talk quaint. But this is business. And this is about brands that care. And whether brands come to us because they don't want to end up on 60 Minutes or on your newsreel because they've put their logo on a sweatshop product, or because they want to be on the right side of history, or because they are on the right side of history, it doesn't really matter to us. Our clients are somewhere always along that journey. And we're just there to help out. And we're there to kind of help them incrementally move down that continuum of sourcing more product, of rethinking product. It's like, do you really need to get that knick-knack out? We all the time say to people, like, that's ludicrous. You should not even do something. Like, you don't need to give that out. And it all, it all stems from knowing what your passions are and staying focused on a niche. And for us, this idea of being a sustainable brand and being a mission and an activist-based brand has been, I think, critical to our success. And one of the things that I kind of want to leave you with is I get calls all the time from either new graduates or people in school or mid-career professionals who are looking for passion. They're looking for change. They're dead bored with their job. They feel like they hang up their values at 9 and they pick them up again at 5 when they go home. I get calls from people like that all the time. And, it's not uncommon to walk into an organization and have 50 people in the IT department and 70 people in the finance department and who knows how many in the buying team or the marketing team and like 1 sustainability person or like 3 people that are doing community and foundation. There's not a lot of jobs for those folks. And I'll tell you that the greatest success I've had in both working with brands that we work with now or in my own experience at Mountain Commit Co-op is working with the people in the departments that actually do stuff. So when we tried to measure the carbon footprint at Mountain Equipment Co-op, which was in my job description, in my accountability, I didn't know the difference between a shipper and a carrier. I didn't know anything about logistics. I'd go into meetings with those guys, and they'd kind of roll their eyes at me like, you don't know what you're talking about, who are you? And yet I had this accountability that I couldn't deliver on. I had no power, I had no influence, and I had zero knowledge. And that was just the reality of it. When we were able to swing the dial after like 4 or 5 years of kind of knocking our heads against the wall, they finally came on board. Fuel surcharges kicked in, and suddenly they were knocking on my door. And when they were, it was a matter of moments before we had a carbon footprint for the emissions profile of every product that MEC made from every factory globally and shipped into Vancouver and then shipped out to all of our stores, because they were the ones with the expertise. And that's happened to me again and again in dealing with HR issues, in dealing with marketing teams, in dealing with our IT guys. Some of my favorite people are IT people, because they will help you get and access the data you need to succeed and move the dial. So, I think there's a lot to be said by coming at it from the perspective of a geographer, by coming at it from the perspective of somebody who's a CGA or somebody who's into logistics or who's into communications and marketing. It doesn't even matter. It really is about bringing that passion, not feeling like you need to leave it at the door, and figuring out how your secret sauce, how your portfolio, how your accountability or your skill set can help drive change where you are, regardless of where you are. So I'm going to leave it at that. I know there's a Q&A after. I'm super excited to be here. I'm totally impressed with how many people are here. It's kind of got me like, oh yeah, I do love SFU. It's an awesome school, and it just kind of reminded me of that. So thanks so much for inviting me, and I look forward to the Q&A and hearing more from you guys.
Thank you so much to Wes, Shawn, and Denise. And indeed, we are kind of an awesome school. This is what brought me back. We're running a little bit behind. I know we kind of stand between you and these snacks that are waiting outside, but I do want to do a couple of questions because I'm sure there are some. So why don't we open up the floor? We've got microphones on the side there. So do we have any questions for our 3 panelists today? Do we have someone who are not one of our past presidents asking questions?
Oh, there's someone in the back.
No, we've actually got a question in the back. Yeah.
This is why these guys are presidents.
When you are trying to help other countries...
Oh, sorry, the microphone's right there.
When you are trying... Good. When you are trying to help other countries... projects in other countries, do you find that there is red tape that is slowing down what you want to do? And how do you engage the communities if the language isn't English?
Good questions. So the first question, yes, but most of our work is primarily finding an entrepreneur who really knows how to navigate their local ecosystem. We only work through entrepreneurs who have lived experience of the problem they're trying to solve, and we come in a little later in the game and try and help them refine and accelerate that idea. And also working in Uganda and Kenya, the working language for us primarily has been in English. I'm starting to do more work in Latin America right now, and the answer is I'm learning Spanish really quickly.
Great, thanks, Shawn. I believe I saw another question over there. Gentleman with the hat, perfect. Just wait for the microphone.
So my question is for Shawn. And great presentation, Shawn. It's really great to see that SFU is very engaged and really encouraging social entrepreneurship. And I'm also aware that this whole trend of building incubators for social entrepreneurship is getting common. I know that the other university, they have one called ISIS. So I'm just curious to see what is your plan on how can we win that competition? What is our game plan?
We like to call it collabetition. We do actually try and work on a few things with ISIS and folks, because I think we've both got 2 levels of work. We've both got deep university work that is okay to replicate, and there's tons of good work that needs to be done. And then we've both got ecosystem building work that we need to think about how to work together, and whether it's staging or whether it's different sectors, or there's no point in replicating each other's work. I think a differentiator, not in that specific conversation, but in the sector in general, I'm particularly worried about the fact that there's an incubator on every corner. And most of them don't actually do a heck of a lot of work with their ventures and then claim everything that venture ever does for the rest of their life as the success of the incubator program. And so our program's quite a bit more labor intensive, and we go really deep and work really hard with the entrepreneurs. So we're basically on your team for the 6 months you're in the program. Not to paint everybody with the same brush, but trying to make sure, we call it Delta R. We're trying to make sure that there's actually like a steep change in your trajectory after coming through us.
Thanks, John. Do we have any questions from this side of the room? Yeah, just in the back there.
So I have a question for Wes. It's great that you're doing work in the downtown east side, and we're so close to it. We're only a few blocks away. But what I was reading a few months ago was a restaurant that opened up in that area, and there's a lot of backlash against it about gentrification, and you're trying to open up businesses here, you're trying to build condos here. So what do you say to those people? How do you approach them? Because you want to do business, you want to be in the area, but there's also a lot of backlash.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and there's a lot of tension in the area, over that. So navigating that is what I have been doing for a couple of years, and I think with that specific case, we never disagreed with the cause of the protest. We also, as a BIA, my board of directors and I also agree that there are serious housing needs in the downtown east side, and that we do need to be concerned about conversions of SROs, loss of social housing, supportive housing. But there's also a range of other housing needs that we have too that don't get as much attention, including needs for young professionals, those who want to have families in the city, or so those are very serious issues, and so we never disagreed with them. But targeting a small business, we felt tactically was not, we disagree with that. We didn't think that was going to result in any more social housing, or that was not going to reduce poverty in the area. I think for us, what's most important is trying to build social capital in the community. And that means the trust, the reciprocity, understanding that there's things, whether you're an activist in the social justice space or you're an entrepreneur, there are things that you might not agree about, and that social justice advocate might not agree with the type of business that might be open there, but there are things that you can agree on, and there are partnerships that you can build. And so for us, we've really tried to focus on, let's find those things that we can agree on and can build on, and respectfully just disagree on about the things that we can't come to terms with. And that's where we're hoping to find the way forward.
Thank you. Do we have another question? I think, oh yeah, go ahead, sir.
In terms of...
just hang on for the microphone. We just got to get the audio for tape.
Thank you. Thank you for the microphone. In terms of impact, like worldwide impact, like SFU wants to be the #1 university in the world, maybe in the next 25 years, or I don't know.
That's
maybe in my lifetime.
That's a very ambitious goal, my friend.
Why not? We can dream here. And although I'm at the other side, but in terms of Facebook, Twitter, all those, how do we reconcile that and the community? Of course, we have to create a worldwide impact. I mean, you guys have done an excellent job, a wonderful job. And you have raised the stature of our university. But I think we can still do more. That's all. I'm not the
Shall
one.
I take that as a comment? Okay, all right. I do actually have one more question for the three of you. I think, Denise, you mentioned many of us sometimes have to check our values at the door when we head to work 9 to 5, and the three of you have kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. So what do you say to someone who's looking to be an entrepreneur? What are your tips in driving through an organization and being that change and being that fire within, and sometimes what can be older, stuffy corporations that don't like to change?
We used to, I did something, and I've seen other people do this pretty effectively, is find kind of a sponsor or a mentor. Find someone who has some influence in the organization, or maybe just history and experience, and start to map out the key players. And something that, I've seen people do with impact is literally have a grid. For us, we had a grid with kind of passion and commitment to what we were trying to do and change on the one axis, and knowledge and understanding on the other axis. Because what we found is sometimes we'd have people, for example, at the retail stores, super passionate, incredibly passionate, out there on the front lines. But their understanding of the real levers for change institutionally or in the supply chain or wasn't there. And the best example of that is having staff come up to me when we were trying to literally invent a new magazine grade, like catalog grade paper that was forest stewardship certified. This would have been 15 years ago. It didn't exist, and we were trying to create an entire new category of paper just for the Mountain Equipment Co-op catalog. And I'd have staff come up waving their Post-it notes saying, like, why isn't this recycled? And it's like those sorts of, okay, what's the tactic we take with that team to have them understand the levers of power and the impact and how to prioritize? On the other hand, you'd get these people who really knew what was going on, but they didn't care. And that's a whole other tactic. So really understanding, like for me, along those axes, like where are people positioned? And the other, trick or tip that I always give people is figure out who the influencers are, and they're generally not the people with like the VP or the executive VP title. Like find out who the real deal people are in your organization, and they're not always the people with the titles beside their names, but the people with influence, the people that your organization respects, find them. I had a fairly mid-level junior person in human resources, and every 3 months I'd take her out for the best, scones and coffee money could buy. And sure enough, she was the person that whenever a job description came up for renewal or someone's category came up for renewal, she was the one who rewrote their job description. So whenever someone's job came up and she thought, boy, I'll bet you that executive VP of logistics might have a little accountability that Denise would be interested in, she'd call me and say, is there anything I could put in there for you? So
very strategic.
Yeah, be strategic, understand, who influences what.
Yeah.
So where are the best scones in the city? No, I'm just kidding. Shawn and Wes?
I agree, too, that you need to find those champions. And once you find them, if you're on the change-making side already, you cultivate those sort of relationships. But I think that anyone can be an entrepreneur, or a social entrepreneur, really, within their respective businesses or institutions. And I think it's about a change in thinking, really. And I think Denise really gets at it with talking about Fairware and how it's about using your purchasing power. It's about conscious decision making when you purchase. It's not about necessarily charity and giving, as important as those things are, but it's about realizing that the vast amounts of capital that go washing over the globe are, it's not the charitable sector that's doing that. It's the private sector usually, and large institutions and government obviously have incredible purchasing power too. So how do we align the purchasing power of large institutions, of corporations, of all these things to find those opportunities? And it doesn't have to be just employment. It could be, you have an office and once again, you need flowers or you need to move some paper from point A to point B. Is there a solution that offers some sort of social impact or environmental impact in the community? Usually it just takes going on Google and looking around. If you care about it, go out looking for it. And if you want to, create some impact within your organization, it just takes a little bit of sniffing around. You can find something cool. Yeah.
Shawn, did you want to add to that?
A quick comment. I think find your allies, obviously. I also think proactively map out who's out there and what all their incentives are. I think very few people are trying to be jerks, but they have different incentives in the organization, and they're incentivized to do different things, and they're rewarded for doing different things, and their eyes on different things. So if you actually understand what all of those influence levers are, doesn't mean you can pull them all, but you certainly understand what it is that you're trying to navigate.
I'll give you a quick anecdote. The moment that things changed the fastest for me at Mountain Equipment Co-op, and this was one of those like scones and a cup of coffee with the CEO who was my boss, and he said, "What's one thing I could do for you this year?" And I said, "You could put a sustainability-related goal in the compensation bonus plans of every executive VP in the organization," and he did. And I can't tell you how that changed the dial.
Wow. Can I leave our alumni also with just like terms? I want everyone to walk away with some terms here. Not only social innovation, but social impact purchasing, social impact employment, Those are terms that I want people to be aware of, because when you start looking for purchasing options or you start looking for employment options, hopefully these are key terms that can help you in those searches. And we see, I think people are getting better and better at quantifying the impact that we're having and finding metrics that make sense for these different types of impacts. And I think that you'll find that by generating value with those decisions, the cost-benefit analysis becomes, you look at it in a different light. And you understand the value that you're generating through your purchasing decisions. And it doesn't just come down to the balance sheet displaying how you spent the money. It comes down to your money did this, and your company is able to do this. And that's a powerful thing. And that casts the power of your company or your venture in an entirely new light.
Great. Thank you so much to our three speakers today. So Wes Regan, Shawn Smith, and Denise Teschereau, thank you so much on behalf of everyone here.